All right, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our town hall focusing on human resources. Joining us today are Provost Nick Jones and Chief Human Resources Officer Susan Basso. Today's town hall is sponsored by Penn State Today and the University Staff Advisory Council, and it's part of an ongoing effort to facilitate a discussion between faculty and staff and senior leadership and allow them to talk about important issues. Now, we're going to get to all of your questions in just a moment, but first, I'd like to turn it over to our provost.
Thanks very much. I'd like to welcome everybody here in Freeman Auditorium on the University Park campus and those who are participating in today's town hall online via our live stream. As always, town halls like this one allow members of the Penn State community to receive updates on university initiatives, learn more about key topics, and ask questions and provide feedback. Today's hour-long town hall meeting, sponsored by Penn State Today and the University Staff Advisory Council, will focus on human resources issues at Penn State. You can email your questions to questions@psu.edu or submit them through Twitter using the hashtag #PSUStrong. Audience members here in the present also can submit questions by writing them down and handing them to staff you'll see moving up and down the aisles. The names of people submitting questions through any means will not be collected or shared. Before we open the floor to your questions, I'd like to ask Susan Basso, Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for Penn State, to make some opening remarks. Susan?
Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to very respectfully thank Strategic Communications and the University Staff Advisory Council for inviting me to join the stage today with Nick. As many of you know, there is a tremendous amount of change going on within human resources, and I know that all the things we are working on in HR greatly impact employees at Penn State. So I'm very pleased to be able to be here and answer your questions. I'm happy to answer questions on a broad list of topics. Just to name a few, happy to talk about the HR transformation, work lion, performance management, happy to talk about policy, process issues, benefits, compensation, any of these issues that really matter to you and, of course, to your families. I'm really excited that a number of my HR team is here. Thank you all for being here. What I appreciate most is that they are working extraordinarily hard on your behalf, even though it sometimes doesn't always feel that way. They're also going to hopefully be taking some notes, because I hope you can also appreciate that there are so many things going on. I'm not intimately familiar with everything. And so if I can answer your questions, I'm certainly committed to following up with them and getting you the answers that you deserve. So again, thank you, and we look forward to getting going. If I could keep my microphone functioning.
That's very convenient.
Yes, right. Okay.
Okay, thank you both for that. We're going to start with our questions right away. One of the things that's on many people's mind is there going to be a raise this year?
I guess I'll take
Is there?
I guess I'll take that one. We are, as I think everybody is aware, it is another challenging budget year for both the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the university. We are going through the various stages in our budget planning process for next fiscal year. That process began back in the fall when we submitted our appropriation request to Harrisburg after approval from our Board of Trustees. Since that time, we have had information coming from Harrisburg, most notably the governor's statement on his proposed budget, which has a 0% increase in appropriation for state-related universities. That obviously presents a challenge for us. We were hoping for some number other than zero, but at this stage it is zero, and we are planning around that. It probably will be very difficult for us to do accommodate a 0% increase in the appropriation without raising tuition for both out-of-state and in-state students. But President Barron and I are both committed to doing everything we can do to ensure that there is a general salary increase pool available. We're not sure where it's going to end up yet because there are many considerations yet to be dealt with, including the finalization of Pennsylvania's budget. So we're hoping that it'll be in the 1.5% to 2% range, which is nothing to get too excited about, I know, but we are committed to make that, do everything we can do to make that a number other than zero.
And sticking with compensation, would it be possible to attach general salary increase to a dollar figure instead of a percentage that would benefit people at the lower end of those salary bands?
So I guess I'll take that one. Certainly, from a compensation perspective, these are things that we're talking about in human resources all the time. And I think if I understand the question correctly, it might be more akin to like a lump sum kind of payment. And certainly there are certainly opportunities to do things like that. I think what we're mostly focused on in HR is really focused on pay for performance. And particularly with staff employees, the opportunity to really reward people based on merit and based on their work effort really is something that I think we believe is the most appropriate way to approach compensation, but certainly willing to explore other options, and certainly things like lump sum are certainly something that we can talk about.
I would add also that we do have always a merit component in every salary increase, but there are opportunities to make equity adjustments if it is felt that a particular employee is not being fairly compensated for their duties. And so those are sometimes done in the form of percentages, sometimes done in the form of lump sum increments, but that flexibility certainly exists and is exercised across the institution.
To build on that, how can an employee go about initiating a move like that if they feel like their duties have increased or their responsibilities have increased, to try and get something like that happening for them?
So certainly the first approach and the best approach is really to sit down with your supervisor and really have that conversation about how you feel that your duties have expanded, because we know that does often happen where jobs morph and change, and we want to make sure that employees are being fairly compensated for the work that they're doing. And your supervisor will work with your, then in turn work with your HR strategic partners and consultants in your academic and or business units to have that information reviewed and then appropriately analyzed by our office compensation folks, and then a determination would be made. So at any time you can really make that request, although we do have periods of the year in which we do that wholesale review.
And I think it's fair to say also that in the annual review process, we're trying to put a little bit more teeth into that process to ensure that those conversations take place between employees and their supervisors. In the past, they haven't always taken place. We think that is something every employee has a right to expect, such a conversation, and that's the opportunity, an important opportunity you have, I think.
Using that as a pivot point, we understand that a new system is coming in for things like review and things like that. WorkLion, tell us a little bit about it.
So the Office of Human Resources, and hopefully eventually the rest of the university community, will be as excited about the WorkLion implementation as we are. WorkLion is actually the brand that was created by one of our students here at Penn State in the Department of Communications, and it really encompasses a number of things. It encompasses a number of technology implementations. So Workday is actually the name of the technology solution that we will be implementing that will deliver our payroll and also, believe it or not, the university's first ever human capital management system. As you might imagine, it's hard to, even some days, for me to believe that we have 40,000 employees at Penn State and no technology or no system to manage all of those individuals. So that is a significant implementation. We're also implementing another piece of technology called NeoCase. This is going to be the front face of Workday, and it's going to be a new HR portal. What's really exciting, I think, about the new HR portal is you're no longer, as an employee, going to have to navigate the complexities of our website. So it is going to be roles-based, so when you log on, it will recognize who you are, and it will only provide information to you that's specific and unique to you. So if you're a faculty member, for example, you will not see benefits and other policies that are really specifically associated with staff. The other aspect of WorkLion really is a wholesale HR business process transformation. So we're not just implementing technology. We're looking at all of our policies. We're looking at all of our processes. And we know these things are going to be critically important to the future of the university, but they do represent a lot of change that we will be socializing with all of you more specifically over time as we move forward with the implementation.
Susan, you did that so well. Would you mind talking about LionPath as well?
No, thank you. I'll pass on that.
But I will just add to Susan's description. We know that many of you, including some of you in this room, have endured a lot over the last 18 months or so as we've gone through the LionPath implementation, and it has been a pretty significant challenge, and we acknowledge that. We are trying to take everything that we've learned from that LionPath implementation in terms of these large-scale enterprise-wide systems, all the things that went well, all of the things that didn't go so well, and learn from them and incorporate that knowledge into the rollout of WorkLion. So we are very optimistic that when we go live with WorkLion, it'll be a transition, and there will be challenge and there will be change. But we are optimistic that putting into place many of the lessons from LionPath will help the WorkLion rollout significantly.
Yeah, and if I could, Nick, just add one thing to that. You know, this is an opportunity that I have to publicly acknowledge the incredible amount of work that these teams have been doing on our behalf. I don't think many of you might realize the heavy lift that's involved with implementing these kinds of systems. And while there are certainly things to complain about at times, I would just encourage us all to kind of be mindful of how hard these individuals are working on our behalf. You know, I think about people that, you know, while many of us are home having dinner with our families, are putting our young children to bed in the evening, we'll be taking phenomenal summer vacations. These folks won't be. And, you know, they're working really hard for us. And so just something to be mindful of as they are our colleagues and peers.
As we go into this new WorkLion system, would it be possible to institute a 360-degree evaluation process wherein they would talk to a supervisor, a colleague, supervisees, if that's appropriate?
Should I take that one, Nick? Absolutely. I think this is definitely something that we're starting to do in certain areas of the university. Many of you may not even be aware that the president of the university goes through a 360-degree evaluation where board members ask for feedback from various constituents about his performance. He's going to be implementing some of that this coming year with his leadership team, and I think naturally some of this will cascade down through the organization. And I think it's really valuable to get that kind of input, because not always as supervisors can we be objective about the individuals that are reporting directly to us.
not that we would wish the full 360-degree evaluation that the president gets on everybody in the room, because it's pretty robust, but a version of that, I think, can be very helpful.
And while we're talking about new systems and some changes, can you outline what's going to be happening with HR 88 and what the rationale behind those changes were?
Sure. So this was something I was just made aware, I think, this week that, there may be some individuals on campus who are a little bit unhappy about the changes that are taking place with HR 88. And I would just right now say that I invite anyone at any time to come and speak with me directly about matters of policy that are concerning to them. The issue with HR 88, quite frankly, is that the way that policy was written and what it was originally intended to do has morphed far beyond its original intent. And from a human resources perspective, while we are making some modest changes to it that are going to affect a relatively small number of Penn State employees, the issue is we cannot meet our legal obligations under a number of pieces of legislation, the Affordable Care Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, and the Family Medical Leave Act, when employees are allowed to make decisions about their work schedule on a daily basis. It is just an impossible administrative challenge. And so we are continuing a great deal of the flexibility in HR 88. We have no intention of changing that. And as a matter of fact, once we are live in Workday, HR is going to be working really hard to look at other types of policies, workforce policies that we need to bring to Penn State that offer a much greater degree of flexibility for our employees going into the future.
And so I would add, and Susan and I have had many conversations about this, both in the context of HR 88, but just more broadly, as we look to 2017 and beyond, our ability to focus flexibly on the needs of our employees is going to be critical to our success as an institution moving forward. I think things that limit or constrain our ability to work flexibly with individuals it is going to make it harder for us to succeed as an institution. So we're all for flexibility, but we do have to do it in a manner that is consistent with federal and, in some cases, state reporting obligations.
Here's a question coming in from our live audience about how we benchmark ourselves with other universities, particularly in the Big Ten, and how does our compensation packages stack up with some of those other schools, say Ohio State and Michigan?
You do have a...
Sure.
Yep.
So maybe employees don't know that we do have an official peer set that we benchmark ourselves against on a fairly regular cadence. Our peer set, although I couldn't cite all the institutions right now off the top of my head, is comprised of 30 institutions across the country, 15 public and actually 15 private. Most are also in the AAU, similar to Penn State. And we are always looking at that compensation data and really looking at, where we need to be targeting pay. And then there are other kinds of positions where we don't really need to be looking nationally because we make generally more regional hires. And so sometimes we look at other sources of data maybe for IT positions or finance positions that are not just unique to higher ed, but are across industries. So do I think Penn State has some work to do in this space? Yes, we definitely do. And I will tell you that when I arrived at Penn State 6 years ago, in the spirit of complete and total candor, it was an institution that targeted pay at probably around the 25th percentile. And, I think a preeminent research institution, we should and could be doing better. But obviously it takes resources, it takes understanding, it takes time. But be assured that we look at it, and I think it's something that leadership is very committed to addressing where appropriate.
I think on the faculty side we do a little better, and this was because a conscious effort was made some years ago to address the level of faculty salaries in the institution, which were toward the low end of our peer group, the Big Ten plus, and so an effort was made to address that, and now we tend to rank in the top 2 or 3 of the Big Ten in terms of faculty salaries. One thing that we always have to be careful about is when we talk about that benchmarking, we're often talking about median or average salaries in a particular category. Of course, what is really important and where the rubber meets the road is what the distribution of salaries is, because while we can have a good-looking median, it could well be that our distribution is a little odd, and we have things to address, and so that's something that we're trying to pay much more strategic attention to, as Susan indicated, across the board, faculty and staff.
And on staff, we had a question come in, and how do we retain our highly skilled technical staff when there are so many draws on them, both to other institutions and the private sector?
Well, I think that's a great question. If anybody has a solution to it, I'd welcome hearing it. Yeah, retaining staff, especially in the future, is going to be critically important. Anybody who knows anything about the demographics right now in our country, talent pipelines are shrinking significantly. And so our ability to retain, particularly top-tier talent, is going to be a significant focus. In fact, maybe at this point I would just kind of refer everyone to HR's strategic plan. If you've not had the opportunity to look at it, it's on our website, and I hope you get a chance to look at it. And I hope when you read it, in some way you see yourself in the plan, because we have highlighted as one of 4 strategic priorities talent management, which really is, how do we not only get staff and talented faculty to the institution, but what are the things that we need to do to keep them here?
Yeah, and I would add in many of the areas where it is important that Penn State does really well in order to be the institution that we want to be, it is just vital that we retain talent. And frankly, I think over time we've done well, often more by good luck than good management. Good luck is a good thing, but it can only get you so far, and I think we have to pay, and we are paying more attention to ensuring that there are pipelines for people to advance, and they can see their way forward to a career at Penn State. Some of you may be aware, I know this is probably mainly staff in the audience, but the Faculty Senate recently approved a new titles document for fixed-term faculty. There was actually an article today in the Chronicle of Higher Education about what Penn State did that effectively commended us for this action. While it hasn't been signed by the president yet, it is highly likely that it will be, and a big part of that was really focused on, for this critically important component of our faculty, fixed-term faculty, how can we ensure that they have sustainable career development opportunities that provides a mechanism by which they can comfortably stay at Penn State and put in many years of service and be suitably embraced and rewarded by the institution. So that's a good example, I think, of where we've really taken some strong action and are actually considered to be in a leadership position nationally with the work that we're doing in that space.
Yeah, and if I could just give a quick shout out, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I have just recently recruited our first ever Senior Director of Talent, Diversity, and Inclusion. Maybe Sarah, if you just want to give a wave, Sarah Oliver Carter is a new member of my team, and many of these issues around talent acquisition and talent management are going to be in her portfolio of responsibility. So we're excited that she's here, and I know she's eager to get started.
Is she eager to come up and take your place?
Come on up.
Sticking with that theme of advancement, we've had some people that feel like they have reached the top of their respective salary band or position and they don't really have anywhere to go at Penn State. They want to remain loyal to the university, but they just don't see a career path. What can be done to help set some clear paths for them?
So I'm the first to admit we've not done nearly enough in this space. This is something that's going to be of very particular focus in HR's future state. As we kind of shift a lot of the transactional, kind of mundane, routine HR-related work off the plates of the individuals that are serving in strategic roles in your colleges and business units, these are some of the things that they can help you focus on. And I think we've started to lay some good building blocks for moving in this direction. In order to have really good career pathing, you really need to have a really good foundational performance management system. And I know everyone doesn't love you at PSU. It's going to get a lot better when we move into Workday, but I will say that that is going to be very foundational to the kinds of things that you are going to see. And I do think Penn State offers a tremendous amount of professional development opportunities. We have lots and lots of really, really high quality programs, and I would encourage any of you, particularly staff, to take advantage of these opportunities as they become available.
I would put, because I'm the Chief Academic Officer, I of course have to put a plug in for that last thing that that Susan said. I think we have a responsibility as an institution to ensure that pathways exist and new pathways are developed, but there is a piece of this that is on you all as well, and that is to take advantage of educational opportunities that present themselves to you, because you need to take some strategic control of your career advancement as well, and do the training and the work that is necessary to position yourself maybe for a lateral or slightly upward move into another job category in order to advance further. So I encourage you all to take advantage of those training opportunities, and there are many, as Susan indicates, and think very strategically about how you want to advance through your career and what your end goal is as an employee at Penn State.
And how can a staff or faculty member bring up the conversation with their supervisor that, hey, I need to take some time to do those trainings? If they feel that they're overwhelmed, then they can't give up their current work projects to do training.
Yeah, so you do need to bring it up with your supervisor, and if you have a supervisor that's not particularly supportive of these things, you have your HR strategic partner and consultant that you should be able to rely on. And if they're not doing their job, you certainly can let me or a member of my senior leadership team know that as well. But one of the things that we're going to be rolling out probably in the next week or so, and this was really thanks to the good work of Susan Rattan in my ERLR group, we're going to be making a formal statement, a university-wide statement on release time for staff. That really, I think, sets a very positive tone that supervisors really need to be permitting you to be released from your responsibilities to do these kinds of professional development things that are going to be particularly important to Penn State in the future. Of course, it is their call as to whether or not they can permit you to go based on workload and things like that. But we do pay attention to that, and we don't want to see supervisors that have a pattern of not letting individuals take advantage of these important opportunities.
With many things changing, we've gone through 3 or 4 of them already, what can be done to address what's called change fatigue? People are getting tired of these constantly new updates, so what would you have to say about that?
Oh boy.
I've got it.
Yes, I have it too, and I've only been here for 4 years. At the risk of using a cliche that you've heard probably too many times here recently, change is the new normal. We are in a time where things are changing rapidly. The external environment is changing. Our internal environment has to change with it. The environment, the competitive environment, whether we're talking about hiring staff or recruiting students, that's constantly changing. It's really important for us to stay up with the latest, I don't want to say the latest and greatest, but the sort of most contemporary approaches in everything that we do. Part of the reason that you all have drawn a little bit of a straw, short straw perhaps, that you are experiencing a lot of change, is that arguably the institution was slower than it should have been to embrace change before. So we sort of locked into a way of doing things for many years, and things moved past us. And now we're in a position where we're having to play a little catch up. And so if you are sensing that the pace of change is great, you are right, because it is, because we're playing a little bit of catch up. And in no area more perhaps than these enterprise systems do we see that, where I think, as many of you know, our legacy systems were home developed in languages for which we can find no one to program anymore. So if the old ISIS had stayed online and crashed, we would have been hard-pressed to find people that we could pull in to help us fix those problems, because it's such an ancient language. I offered my Fortran programming experience, but that offer was not well received. But that's the challenge we're in, and that's why doing catch-up in some of these areas is critical. I can assure you that it may not seem like it every day, but we are very sensitive to the pace of change and trying to manage the rollout of these systems in a way that it doesn't all come down on everybody at once. I know there are days that you probably think he's just saying that, because that can't be true. It is true. We have a lot of work to do. Then there are certain things that are imposed upon us externally that we have to react to, frankly. And I would much rather be in a position of us taking strategic control of change rather than just being subjected to it when it gets forced upon us. So we're doing a little catch-up. We have to kind of hang on. It's a bit of a marathon right now, but I think we will get through this, and we will be in a much better place. And I think we're committed as an institution to ensure that we don't fall behind again. We just can't afford to do that. It is too difficult for people to endure a pace of change like this on an ongoing basis.
We've received several questions about what is going to happen to employees' health care and their health care benefits coming up. Can you address that?
I'll take that one.
Yep.
So it's a little early to predict exactly where we're going to be with benefits with the health care in 2018. But what I can assure you is that a number of things are taking place, and as soon as we can roll out detailed information to you, we intend to do so, and it certainly will be before everyone departs for the summer. What I would say is, as we are having these conversations and socializing a lot of different concepts, we have established, I think, very trusting and helpful relationships with a number of constituencies across the university. We are meeting on a regular basis with the Faculty Senate Benefits Committee, the Joint Committee on Insurance and Benefits. The President has charged a Healthcare Advisory Committee that's made up of a number of experts in this area. And we're also, we've had the opportunity to start to present some early ideas to the University Staff Advisory Council. And so in those conversations, what I can assure you is that employees and their families are always first and foremost in the conversation. So making sure that we can offer high quality, accessible care at an affordable cost really are really what are driving all of the conversations. And then with the help of the Faculty Senate last year, we established guiding principles, which we really never had before. And these guiding principles are helping us stay very focused on what it is we need to be paying attention to. And an important guiding principle is that we want to stay with a 75-25 employer-employee share. And then the other really important guiding principle is that we want to maintain choice for our employees and their families.
I could just give it maybe a little bit of context for Susan's response too. Everything that she said, but we're navigating also a very uncertain and a very dynamic external environment. There was Obamacare, or Affordable Care Act. As I think most of you are aware, many of the provisions of that were rolled in over a multi-year period, so that just didn't start a number of years ago and the switch got thrown. It was phased in. We had to navigate to respond to that. Then there was going to not be Obamacare, and then there was not Obamacare. It's a very unpredictable environment. We find ourselves having to make decisions with in a context of great uncertainty, and it's really very challenging. So I think Susan referring to the Healthcare Advisory Committee, this is a really important group, and frankly, us, are very happy to and fortunate to have the expert insight and advice and guidance of really some of the very best thinkers that we could hope for in terms of our faculty participation on that, and they're helping us navigate through what is a very, very turbulent time period in this space.
Is there anything that the employee can do to help lower cost? Would there be a consideration for healthy living?
Well, we're all for it, of course. I think there are some things, and I know that I think one of the questions that came in advance of the town hall was asking the question about health club sponsorship, and this is something that comes up on a fairly regular basis, and it's something that I've always personally been interested in. And through Blue Shield, there are programs that really make things like gym access very affordable and very flexible. And so we do have some things like that are built in terms of, I'll let Susan address the possibility of incentives, other incentives that can be considered.
So yes, our committees, we're always talking about these kinds of things. Certainly, there's, I'm sure, no shortage of ideas within the campus community, and of course at the Commonwealth campuses as well. And if people have suggestions, or maybe you have someone in your family that works for another employer who's doing something incredibly innovative, or a little bit maybe more ingenious than what we're doing, we certainly would welcome hearing about those kinds of things. But I do think, we are a self-insured employer, so the premiums that we collect from you go right back out the door to pay claims. So the healthier that our employees are, the better it is for all of us.
We had a very specific question come in and deals with healthcare and exercising and going to some of those gyms, rec hall, and concerned that programs, particularly those in the lunch hour for faculty, have been canceled there. And they said it's a hardship to go across campus to go to another gym. Is this a long-term plan? Is anything going to change there or come back?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I just heard about this last week when I saw the question. So I asked, of course, one of my team members to look into it, and only to learn. I mean, I think some of these things, people make assumptions that these are all HR-related things. This is one of those things that actually has nothing to do with us. and it has to do with a facility situation, athletics, and student affairs. But it is, on our radar, and I, will be kind of following up with, our Vice President for Student Affairs to try to get a better understanding of why that some of these classes are being closed down to staff.
We're going to switch focuses and talk about some job postings. And we had a question come in. What is the average time for a hiring process to take place?
Way too long. It's a great question. I'm not really sure I know, but I do think we have to get much better at this. Every now and then I'll go out to our job site and I'll see all the jobs, and some of these jobs have been out there for like a year or 2 years, and and I'm thinking to myself, if I'm senior leader at the institution, I'm looking at this, I might be saying to my supervisors, boy, if you can wait that long to fill a job, do you really need it? So I do think it's something that, we really need to be paying attention to. One of the things we're talking about in HR is, how long do we want to let jobs be out there posted? Because it sends a really, really bad message to the rest of the world about, when they look and they see that we have hundreds and hundreds of jobs open. It's just not a good thing. So we are talking about, how we might want to start pushing our supervisors to put start and end dates on positions, because it's even better for candidates, because then they know whether they're an internal candidate or an external candidate, they know what to expect and when they can expect to get an answer from us.
And speaking of job open...
I could just add to one of the things, having lived in a city like Baltimore for many years and then coming to State College, Susan and I could probably come up with a list of jobs that we could post this afternoon that we could guarantee would not be filled in a year, because we're just not, there are not the people in the community who can respond, and the jobs will not pull people from the outside. So I think that is a challenge, and that challenge exists at 24 locations of Penn State, across 24 plus across the Commonwealth. And I think one of the opportunities we have is to be a little bit more flexible and creative in thinking about how we can leverage that distributed footprint of the university to our advantage, and really look for talent in places where the talent exists, rather than simply expecting it all to show up at a particular location.
We have a lot of new openings because of the VRP. Can you tell us how many people took advantage of that?
587.
Yay! Very good, Nick. Yay!
Yeah, it was. I'll start. Susan may want to add a little bit to this. It was 587 individuals across all of Penn State at all of our locations. If you want to do the math, each one of those individuals had a minimum of 15 years of Penn State experience. So even if you multiply, say, 600 times 15, you are starting to get to a fairly large number. And keep in mind that many of those individuals had 30 plus years of experience. So we have a whole lot of collective Penn State accumulated knowledge and experience walking out the door over a 6-month period between December 2016 and June 2017. So this is, there's no question we are going to feel this impact, and we're going to feel it acutely in June, when 75% of those individuals are transitioning to retirement. That said, we think that this presents the university with an extraordinary opportunity. We were able to realize some savings from this process, but these are savings that are available for us to strategically reinvest in institutional workforce. And there's probably not a person in this room who can't think of the person or the job that they desperately need to have filled in order to get something done, but they are told repeatedly the resources to do that simply don't exist. We now have an opportunity with the VRP over the next several years to really take a good hard look at our workforce and our workforce needs and make the investments that we need to make while being mindful of filling the duties, the critical duties that were vacated by these individuals who were leaving. Going back to the earlier question too of upward mobility for workforce, all of these individuals who left the university were eligible to retire, and so many of them occupied sort of more senior level positions, and so that has created actually a very good opportunity within Penn State for people to move up or have the opportunity to move up should they desire to do so. I don't know.
Yeah, right on. I agree.
And can you quantify how much weight is given to internal versus external candidates in some of those positions that are opening up?
You know, I don't know that we really quantify our recruitment in that way. I think what I have found since I've arrived at Penn State, as I've talked to my peers across the country, we do a tremendous amount of promotion from within at this institution, and you know, finding that right balance, because we heard earlier how important it is to you know, to retain top-tier talent, but at the same time, I think, you know, it's important always to be thinking about, you know, when it's appropriate to bring in, you know, talent that's external to the institution that can provide a fresh, maybe in some cases, more innovative perspective.
At one extreme end of the spectrum, of course, that applies to faculty positions, because virtually for every faculty position, we are casting a very broad net and recruiting nationally or even globally in some instances. And I would say the majority of faculty hires, for obvious reasons, probably come from outside the university, and it transitions from there.
This is a topic that always comes in a lot of questions. A lot of people ask about it, but have there been any changes, or are there any changes on the horizon about maternity and paternity leave?
Boy, this is a hot topic. This comes up a lot. Yeah, this is certainly a policy we're always talking about. And I know there is a lot of concern, particularly on the part of staff, that there appears to be disparity between what the faculty get, which is maternity or paternity leave, and what the staff get. But what we have tried to clarify, and in our benchmarking bears this out, is that staff have a tremendous amount of leave in which, you know, they accrue time that faculty do not. So there are very distinct differences between the two groups of employees in this space. That is not to say this is not something that we're talking about. We are talking about it. We are thinking about and talking with other institutions about you know, how they handle this. One of the things that we are absolutely going to be doing in 2018 during open enrollment is we are going to be rolling out for the first time a short-term disability plan. This will be a voluntary benefit, so you could choose to elect it or not. But this is an opportunity to kind of ensure your income and kind of bridge that gap for times when you have not accumulated, you know, enough time off to be able to take it, and you know, if you were to have a disability. And certainly under the law, you know, pregnancy is defined under the law as a disability, so that would be an opportunity to use that benefit.
Speaking of some sick time, we had several questions come in. Is there any consideration to allow employees to donate their sick time to someone else?
So yes, we've talked about this a great deal as well. And right now we allow vacation donation, and we do not allow sick donation. Frankly, I kind of run hot and cold on this as a topic, because I think it's certainly something we could do, The concern on the part of my HR team, because they're the ones that have kind of cautioned me against it, is that, you know, we provide sick time as a benefit for individuals for that time when they need it. And when you're donating it, you just never know when you're going to be struck with something. And we have heard lots of horror stories of employees who have been struck ill with something significant, need to be out of work for a long time, they've had an accident, and you just never know when that's going to happen. And if you're donating your time, as generous as you are and as generous as you want to be, you know, it doesn't preserve the benefit for a time when you might need it. And so that seems to be, you know, the underlying concern. But it's certainly something that we're talking about. And like I said, if this is something that employees absolutely think they'd like to be able to do, you know, we certainly can explore it more fully. But I would just caution and remind folks to be thinking about, you know, what personal situation you could potentially find yourself in.
That's where it's different from vacation, because
yes,
you can donate all your vacation time, I guess, if you want, but
yeah,
you are giving up your ability to take a vacation. But that's different from sick, because you never know when you'll need it.
Exactly.
We did have a specific faculty member say that they're retiring and have hundreds of hours that are just going to waste. Would that be a different situation since there would not be that consideration?
Haven't thought about that. I'd like to take that back and maybe talk with my team about that and
That's a great question.
See what that, you know, what that would mean.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, we're coming into the final less than 10 minutes, so we're just going to wrap up with a few more questions. And getting back to WorkLion, we had a question come in, and is there going to be a section dedicated to those long-term goals, if that's advancement or something, rather than the immediate annual goals?
That's a good question. I'm not really, you know, in the weeds specifically about what the new performance management tool is going to look like, but we can commit to getting an answer to that for everyone. But I think it's primarily focused on, you know, annual goals and objectives, and not the longer term. But we do expect that supervisors would be having conversations with our employees or their employees about their long-term goals and where they might see themselves, you know, in the future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to emphasize. WorkLion and what WorkLion represents is tools to help manage these processes, but we're not taking people out of the process, and those conversations that employees have with their supervisors will continue to be critically important.
And how are you educating the supervisors on how to navigate this new process and to help their supervisees do so as well?
So we have a tremendous amount of training that we're you know, rolling out to supervisors about the performance management process. And in some areas, I think this year, I think in finance and business in particular, some of this training for supervisors is actually going to be mandatory.
We have had questions come in about that mandatory training and sort of the change fatigue. We also have training fatigue as well. And is there anything being done to address what some people feel they're spending a lot of their time, particularly a new hire, going through many, many training processes?
Yes. I think this is a good example of what I was referring to before, where I think we as an institution had probably fallen behind in terms of the amount of training we really were obligated to do. There is mandatory training, which we don't have a lot of choice over. There are requirements imposed on us externally where training will meet those requirements, and so we opted for training. And then there were things that we think were desirable for Penn State employees to know that required training. And so we went from having, I would say, a modest level of training several years ago to quickly adding this training, that training, and that's led to some of that, I think, fatigue with training. And we're very sensitive to that. And over the last 2 or 3 years in particular, we have worked very hard to try to streamline and rationalize a lot of that. Regis Becker is here in the front. Certainly in the compliance training, we've really tried to take a step back and take a look at all the training that needs to be done and come up with approaches that mean that once you've done the absolute first round of required training, then beyond that, there is less required. It is 2017. We're never going to get away from the need to do a certain amount of training, and the training is more complicated than it needed to be, but I can assure everybody that we are mindful of not making this too onerous and doing everything we can do to really streamline it and tailor it to much more to the individual than we were able to do before, taking advantage of technology and tools that exist.
We've got just a couple of minutes left, so I'd like to ask the two of you, would you like to send everyone home with anything, any closing remarks?
You know, he's going to make me go first. I guess, again, I would just say that, I very, very much appreciate this opportunity, to speak to employees directly. I think what strategic communications and David Gray and Nick Jones have been doing related to these town halls is incredibly important. Institutions of this size and scope, it is very, very difficult to communicate effectively with employees, and people's willingness to, take time to present and as well as to attend or listen online, I think is really going to be very helpful to us as an institution. I think any of my HR team is open always and willing to listen to employees, to hear your thoughts on what we're doing well, what we're doing not so well. And we are not doing everything perfect. In fact, part of the reason why we're going through the transformation is we want to get better. In fact, we want to be really, really good at what we do, and we want our employees to feel really good about working at Penn State. So I would just encourage you to bring things to our attention when there are matters that are of concern to you and or your families.
I would add to that and say that this is the time of year, every year, where I do a visit to every one of our campus locations. And I spend time at each campus with faculty, staff, students, and the leadership. And we really just have a conversation. I bring some updates, but really the most important part of the experience is to have the opportunity to listen to what's on people's minds. One thing that I find remarkable every time I do this, every year, every campus, is the things that I learn about Penn State from people in the trenches that, frankly, I didn't know. But everybody assumed that because I'm the provost that I would know, because the provost knows everything about everything. Not. So just the very fact that people bring these issues to our attention, there have been literally issues raised with us or with me at some of those visits where by the end of the day, we have been able to make a phone call or send an email and get that issue addressed. We just didn't know that there was an issue. And as Susan said, I think the town halls are one mechanism that we're trying to use, but there are others. If there are things out there that you think we need to know about, we need to hear from you, and you can email us both directly if you elect to do that. Frankly, nick.jones@psu.edu. That's your address? Yeah, okay. Frankly, in some cases, the response you may get from us is, yes, that's a great suggestion, and we'll do it. Honestly, sometimes we will say, that's not an unreasonable suggestion, but it can't be done, and here are the reasons. And then sometimes you may get a maybe from us, which is we'll need to take a look at this. But we're all in this together. We all work for the same institution. We all share the vision of this institution. We're all excited about the mission. We're all excited about what this university can accomplish. And we're all in this together, and we want to support all of our staff and faculty, as well as our students, of course, in helping them really be part of the exciting enterprise that Penn State represents. And we value your contributions immensely to this institution, and we wouldn't be the institution we are without you. So we thank you for that, and we're always open to your ideas and suggestions about how we could make things better. So thank you for coming. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to be with us, and thank you to the people who are joining us online as well.
We're trying to make this process better as well, so we'd invite you all to take a survey about the town hall that you just attended. You can find the survey at liveevents.psu.edu. It's the same landing site where this was streamed. Again, that's liveevents.psu.edu. Take the survey, tell us how we can improve the process, and maybe some topics you'd like to see at future town halls. I'd like to thank both of you for speaking to us. And thank you all for attending, and thank you for those who watched online as well. We realize we didn't get to every question, but we're going to try and respond to as many of those as we can through the Asked and Answer video series, Asked and Answered, an ongoing discussion. It's now going to shift in focus to reflect some of these questions. Thank you all, and have a good evening.